So what is the net effect when we are taking testosterone plus finasteride? Leo, I want you to jump right to the conclusion on this. We have a study that shows what happens when you take just testosterone by itself, what happens when you take testosterone plus finasteride, as far as how does that affect the muscle, the fat loss, the prostate, and the hair loss. And then I want to compare all of this to SARMs. Leo, what did you find in your research?
Well, the answer is basically that taking finasteride, in addition to taking testosterone replacement therapy, protects your prostate from enlargement without affecting how much muscle you can grow from the testosterone, which is really shocking.
See, we were concerned that if we take finasteride, we're going to lower DHT. DHT is also an anabolic hormone that improves our physique, builds muscle, burns fat. But this study shows that by taking finasteride, we're not actually decreasing the muscle gaining or the fat loss from testosterone.
You know what's even another thought was that I used to be concerned about this myself, because I have a lot of consultation requests from people taking finasteride. And the concern was, say you abolish DHT completely with dutasteride or finasteride. There's no DHT. But you have high levels of testosterone, higher than normal, super physiological ones. Would you still grow the prostate through the testosterone? Now, maybe at very high doses that could be true, but in this study that we're reviewing today, which is a relatively recent study, it's on 60 people over the age of 60. So elderly people that are hypogonadal, judged by having lower testosterone levels than 300 nanograms per deciliter. They were given 300 milligrams of testosterone long ester per week. That's super physiological dose.
That's much higher than a regular TRT dosage.
Especially for a 60-year-old.
That's the beginning of a bodybuilding dosage.
Exactly. That's what they wanted to know. They wanted to know with super physiological amounts of testosterone, could you still experience the metabolic benefits? In this case, over 52 weeks, they gained about 4 kg of skeletal muscle, or fat-free mass, rather. They lost about 4 kg of fat. They gained 8 to 14% 1-rep max strength in their upper body and lower body just by taking testosterone. And none of this was effective by taking 5 milligrams of finasteride per day. That's Proscar, not the 1 milligram dose. It really dramatically lowered their DHT levels and prevented them from gaining size in their prostate. If they didn't take the finasteride, over 52 weeks, 300 milligrams of testosterone per week caused these 60-year-olds, keep in mind, their prostate grows faster than yours at a younger age, caused growth of over 10 centimeters, cubic centimeters. Whereas once they added 5 milligrams of finasteride, zero growth in the prostate. But still, all of the skeletal muscle gains are equal.
That's such a high dosage of finasteride. I never take that dosage. I don't have anybody take that high of dosage. That means they must be completely eliminating DHT altogether. And does that mean we just don't need DHT, at least as a 60-year-old? Or, we are taking hypogonadal men at age 60. There's a difference between them and a 20-year-old athlete.
You pointed out something really interesting. They mentioned this in the paper. So they were thinking about the issue of, if you have a 5-alpha reductase, which is the enzyme that converts testosterone to DHT, DHT being the hormone that's more present in the hair, in the pubic area, in teenagers or developing adolescents that had a congenital problem with producing 5-alpha reductase, they end up with skeletal muscle issues and stuff like that. So it may be different in adulthood versus in growth.
Yeah.
But in adulthood, it seems to be that if you flatline DHT, you get almost the same skeletal benefits.
Then we have these issues of when people have post-finasteride, post-dutasteride syndrome, they crash their DHT, they lose their sex drive, they lose their mental motivation, and it's hard to get it back. These are the things that I would be really concerned about. So it appears that dutasteride, finasteride may not have a significant impact on muscle growth, but it could have a significant impact on sex drive and motivation and the other masculine androgenic characteristics of male hormones.
So certainly, the main concern that they have is not so much motivation, but anxiety and sex drive, of course. Now, sex drive is both mental and physical, and this is true. So the problem then becomes, if you take finasteride, now what we know from this paper is you really shouldn't be so worried about the finasteride or dutasteride effects on skeletal muscle growth. But what you should be worried about is developing anxiety, which is difficult to combat, really, and the sex drive issues, both mentally and physically. Physically, why? If you're having less prostate growth, it's because there's less androgen receptor signaling literally around the testicles and penis. That also means there's less ability to get erect in the penis, because the androgen receptor signaling in the corpus cavernosum of the penis causes a release of endothelial nitric oxide synthase, which nothing replaces quite exactly. Like tadalafil Cialis won't replace it. So you should end up, if you're not growing the prostate that much, you should end up with slightly worse erections. This is true. But still, the study is very interesting.
So what is the net effect when we are taking testosterone plus finasteride? We are making testosterone more anabolic and less androgenic, because testosterone is 100 anabolic, 100 androgenic. And if you eliminate the DHT metabolite of testosterone by using finasteride, now you're making testosterone very anabolic, but not very androgenic, which brings us to the future of steroids. Testosterone was the first steroid. It's naturally occurring in the body in DHT. And then you had scientists come out with better steroids. They came out with Dianabol and they came out with Winstrol. And through time, we see the evolution of steroids becoming more anabolic, which is still having the muscle building and fat loss benefits, and less androgenic, meaning they have less of the side effects on the skin, the hair. And so that leads us to SARMs, synthetic molecules that are designed to be more anabolic and less androgenic. And so a lot of the people that we help, or I should say in the Train with Tony program, we put them on SARMs because we don't want to impact hair loss, and we don't want to grow the prostate, but we still want the anabolic effect. So if we didn't have SARMs, if SARMs didn't exist, then we would be looking more at how do we use the existing steroids like testosterone, but eliminating more of the side effects of testosterone by using ancillaries to make testosterone and or other steroids less androgenic. Not completely eliminating the androgenic side of steroids, because there are the benefits to sex drive and other things, but at least lowering it so that we don't have hair loss and prostate issues, or our skin doesn't age, or we get acne.
Can I comment on something? So the issue of the androgenic versus anabolic ratio, part of it has to do, when you say androgenic, they don't really mean the effect on the androgen receptor's response elements. So when you agonize the androgen receptor, there's response elements that affect other systems, like for example IGF-1. They don't necessarily mean that, because there is a way that you can bind to the androgen receptor and affect response elements differentially. They also, but here what they mean is, like testosterone itself is binding to the androgen receptor and is very anabolic. The problem is testosterone turns into DHT, which binds very potently to androgen receptors in androgen areas. So the scalp, because the 5-alpha reductase is more present in the scalp, around the pubic area and so on. So really it's also a location thing. Something's androgenic when it causes androgen particularly systematically biased androgen receptor effects in androgen areas, in the hair, in the pubic area. So really, when you take testosterone with finasteride, you're modifying it. So now the androgen to anabolic ratio is very different. Yeah.
So my personal approach, if I'm going to use testosterone, if I'm using a low dosage of testosterone, I'm not going to take something to mitigate DHT. It's not going to be that much DHT. But if I'm going up and up in the dosage of testosterone, then my blood levels of DHT are going to get higher and higher as a result. And so the higher the dosage of testosterone I'm taking, the more likely I am going to be to take something to keep DHT lower, at least just in the normal range, and use something like finasteride. And I prefer finasteride because it is less strong than dutasteride. It's less likely to crash my DHT completely, but people could use dutasteride and they could take it in a smaller dosage, and it's just a little bit more sensitive.
The problem with dutasteride, it has a very long half-life. If you take even a small dose, so dutasteride is a type 1 and type 2 5-alpha reductase inhibitor potently. Finasteride mainly a type 2. Just so you guys know, I mean, I started taking testosterone like 3-4 days ago again, and I've been taking dutasteride every day. I take the injection of testosterone. I don't feel any side effects, but I'm quite resilient. Now, if I take dutasteride without TRT, I get the anxiety, I get the sex drive issues. I don't really feel it that much here. But anyway, the synopsis of all of this is just for you guys to know. They have studied this in a large study and found that adding finasteride can protect your prostate from growth. An interesting follow-up study, by the way, would be the same thing, but just watching the hairline. So see if does finasteride protect your hairline without causing skeletal muscle deficits in terms of the growth that you can get from testosterone. What we know now is basically, regarding dutasteride and finasteride, probably don't worry about gaining less muscle from testosterone, from supraphysiological amounts. Hope that was helpful.
Be swole and swole, friends of freedom, pioneers of human evolution. A day natty is a day wasted.